frontal crash test, which we call a small overlap test. About a quarter of serious and fatal injuries occur in small overlap crashes. Modern cars have structure in the front end that's intended to crush in the event of a crash and keep the damage from getting back to the occupant compartment. But in a small overlap crash, this structure can be bypassed. And in that case, the damage can often extend well into the occupant compartment unless the automaker has designed to prevent that. One of the top performers in our new test was this 2013 Honda Accord four-door. As you can see, the occupant compartment held up reasonably well without major intrusion. As a result, the steering wheel stayed in position, and that meant that the driver airbag was in position to protect the driver's head and chest in the crash. Also, the airbag, the side curtain airbag, extends far enough forward to prevent the driver's head from striking hard structures inside the occupant compartment. The Toyota Camry shows what you don't want to have happen in this crash. You can see that the front wheel has been pushed back into this hinge pillar, which is bent back into the occupant compartment. Behind that is the parking brake, which has been pushed into the driver's leg space. The windshield pillar is pushed back. That's moved the instrument panel inboard. And the steering wheel also moves inboard, so that although the airbags deploy, the driver's head just brushes off the airbag on its way to hitting the instrument panel right here. Structural performance for the Toyota Prius V was poor. You can see that there was major intrusion back into the occupant compartment, and that contributed to high forces measured on the dummy's legs and feet. When the occupant compartment collapses, then the risk of injury to occupants is much greater. Both Toyotas in this group earned poor ratings, the Camry and the Prius V. Toyota engineers have a lot of work to do to match the performance of their competitors. To recognize vehicles with superior performance across all of our crash tests, the Institute has created a new award, Top Safety Pick Plus. The Plus recognizes those vehicles with good or acceptable ratings in our new, more stringent, smaller.
One particularly devastating type of crash is when the car slides underneath the back of a heavy trailer. The Institute tested trailers to see how well their guards prevented underride in a 35-mile-an-hour crash to the back. There were trailers from 8 different manufacturers who together make up 80% of the heavy truck trailer market. Each trailer was tested up to 3 times. There's a full overlap crash test, a 50% overlap crash test, and a narrow overlap crash test. All 8 trailers prevented underride in the full overlap crash test at 35 miles per hour. All but one prevented underride in the 50% overlap condition, and only one managed to prevent underride in all 3 test conditions. The federal government requires that heavy truck trailers be equipped with underride guards that are intended to keep cars from sliding underneath when they crash into the rear. The problem is that when guards are only designed to minimally meet that standard, they're not strong enough to keep that from happening in crashes, even at speeds as low as 35 miles per hour. Modern cars have a crush zone at the front that's designed to collapse in a way that minimizes the risk of injury to occupants inside. But that only works in a crash with a trailer if the trailer's underride guard stays in place, as it has here. In an earlier test conducted in 2010, the weakest guard was on the back of a trailer manufactured by Hyundai. We crashed this Chevrolet Malibu into the center of the guard at 35 miles per hour, and the guard was just pushed out of the way because the bolts holding it to the trailer broke. Had people been riding inside, they would have been killed. The redesigned Hyundai guard worked much better. In the same 35-mile-an-hour crash, it held up, allowing the built-in crash protection of the Chevrolet Malibu to do its job. People riding inside would have been able to walk away without any serious injuries. Only one trailer prevented underride in all 3 of our tests, including the narrow overlap. That trailer was manufactured by Manic, who sell Trailmobile brand in the United States. Most trailers have the vertical supports for the underride guards close to the center of the trailer. The Manic engineers tried something different. They moved the vertical supports outboard, which makes the ends of the guard stronger. All of the trailers in this series of tests had guards that met a Canadian standard, even though the Canadian standard requires that guards be stronger than they're required in the United States. Our research shows that cars are still vulnerable to underride when they hit the outer end of the bar. Outside the main vertical support, there isn't enough additional support to keep the bar from bending forward, allowing the car to slide under in a devastating way. Designing underride guards to the Canadian standards is a good first step, but Manic engineers show it's possible to go much further. If all trailers had guards like the one on the Manic trailer, many of the lives that are lost to underride crashes could be saved.
The car is obviously at a disadvantage. But one of the most devastating kinds of crashes is when a car slides under the trailer of a large truck. Our new research shows that many of the injuries and deaths that occur in these kinds of crashes could be prevented with stronger underride guards. We've studied how underride guards are performing in real-world crashes and discovered that many are failing catastrophically. The guard bends, or it may break away from the trailer, allowing a vehicle to slide under it. Our crash tests demonstrate how easily some guards fail at relatively low speeds. The federal government requires that the backs of semi-truck trailers have underride guards to prevent vehicles from sliding underneath them in the event of a crash. Our crash tests show, though, that the standard is not as strong as it could be and as strong as it should be to prevent this kind of underride. Cars' front end structures are designed to crush in a way to minimize injuries to occupants in serious frontal crashes. But when you crash into the back of a large truck, that protection only works if the truck's underride guard stays in place. The Chevrolet Malibu is a top safety pick. And this is a Malibu after a 40-mile-per-hour crash with another car. The front end structure has absorbed the crash energy from that, and you can see there's lots of survival space in the occupant compartment. This is a Malibu after it struck the rear end of a trailer with a weak underride guard at only 35 miles an hour. This front structure never got a chance to do its work. Instead, the trailer just pushed back, peeled the hood back, put it into the laps of the dummies, and real people could have been decapitated in a crash like this. The Wabash trailer had the strongest underride guard in this series. Its guard meets a tougher Canadian standard. This Wabash trailer prevented underride when the Malibu struck it in the center, where the guard is stronger. But it was a very different story when the Malibu crashed into only the outer end of the guard. The guard isn't strong enough there, and it allowed the Malibu to slide under the trailer, and the trailer ends up back in the occupant compartment. Cars are much more crash-worthy than they used to be, but the federal standard for underride guards hasn't kept pace. Many crashes with big rigs would be much less severe with a stronger federal rule.